evening and welcome to another episode of Mary's Book Club. Today we're going to be reviewing When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. I really hope I said it correctly. This is what it looks like. Now, judging by where my bookmark is, you guys can probably see that I have not finished this book. I don't know that I've done an unfinished book review or a halfway book review in ages. I'm talking like before I actually merged everything on this channel. But it was one of those books that I had to pick up off and on, and I feel like I've gotten enough of it. I may or may not finish it, but I have come to a stopping point, and I thought I was ready to review it. Again, I may be back to actually read the full thing, but I'm ready to move on to something else. So I thought I'd review what I have written so far. It's very tiny font, even though it's a small read. It's very tiny font. So you can actually get carried away sometimes if you go back and review things that you kind of want to highlight. The book is pretty much hard advice for difficult times is what she calls it. And yeah, that's the gist of it. She just really tells stories and talks about her life philosophies, and she talks about Buddhist practices and just she puts a lot of stuff in layman's terms though, so I actually enjoyed it very well. I don't do really well when the book is overly religious, because then it seems more it seems too pushy and modus operandi. Is that the right word? Operandus? Modus operandus. And it takes away from what the person is trying to say, if that makes sense. And I feel like it also singles people out that may not be of that religion. So, and why did I choose to read this? Amazon suggested it. I think I was buying other books. Sometimes I'm just buying other things that are not books, but Amazon is like, hey, here's a book, buy a book. And so I thought the title was catchy, and I actually thought it would be a pretty lighthearted read, something like the 5 Love Languages, something like the 4 Agreements, something like that. I was wrong. But anyway, yeah, let's jump into the quotes. I don't know which ones I'm going to actually read. If we commit ourselves to staying right where we are, then our experience becomes very vivid. Things become very clear when there's nowhere to escape. I really like that. I think a lot of people are avoiding silence. A lot of people avoid being by themselves. A lot of people like to distract themselves with noise and people and vices and things like that. So I think that was actually the first thing I highlighted in the book, because a lot of times I'm highlighting for reminders and confirmation rather than learning something new, if that makes sense. It's just something nice to highlight. And also I'm thinking about what I'm going to share with you guys when I'm doing this. Then she starts talking about meditation, and then it's the kind of discoveries that are made through practice have nothing to do with believing in anything. They have much more to do with having the courage to die continually. I really like that, because it sounds like not getting stuck in your ways, and every single time that I guess you're dying to self or dying to bad habits and dying to whatever that thing is, you're renewing yourself without waiting for a birthday or a New Year's resolution, or to get your job that you wanted, or to get that degree or whatever. It's just always keeping yourself open to becoming a refined version of yourself. I'm all about that. All right. No one ever tells us to stop running away from fear. We are very rarely told to move closer, to just be there, to become familiar with fear. I once asked the Zen master Kobun Chino Roshi how he related with fear, and he said, I agree. But the advice we usually get is to sweeten it up, smooth it over, take a pill, distract ourselves, but by all means, make it go away. So yeah, I think this is kind of what I touched on earlier. I think a lot of times when people are doing all these things to try to numb whatever that thing is, it is the fear of sitting with self, the fear of what you might discover if you're too quiet, the fear of what you might discover if you if you kind of go within. When I was first married, my husband said I was one of the bravest people he knew. When I asked him why, he said, because I was a complete coward, but went ahead and did things anyway. The trick is to keep exploring and not bail out, even when we find out that something is not what we thought. That's what we're going to discover again and again and again. Nothing is what we thought. I can say that with great confidence. Emptiness is not what we thought. Neither is mindfulness or fear. That's so real. Depending on how long you've been watching my reviews, I think like this is always like a theme I always try to pull out as much as possible if the book goes there. What is it? Courage is not like the absence of fear, but like the the will and the wherewithal to actually do it anyway. And that's how I think, for the most part, until very recently, I think that's how I lived my life. I was always doing stuff that made my legs shake, and I'm like, why are you putting yourself through this? Why are you doing this, But like, it was always rewarding too. Like, I would get to the other side and be like, oh my gosh, like, what was the alternative? Like, whatever it is, I don't want to know, because like I'm actually happy with the end result. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective. But it says, when things fall apart and we're on the verge of we know not what, the test of each of us is to stay on that brink and not concretize. The spiritual journey is not about heaven and finally getting to a place that's really swell. I don't know if she was just trying to rhyme or what that was about, but I don't know why I also highlighted it, but suppose it's interesting. Things falling apart is kind of a testing and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, room for relief, for misery, for joy. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one, but we'll see. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. And she talked about when she actually was invited to work at the Abbey. This is like a place she's always longed to work, and for whatever reason, nothing was just panning out. Everything that she had created for herself, like this polished image, a sophisticated, persona, people just were not buying it. And she said everything that I had not been able to see about myself before was suddenly dramatized, as if there weren't enough others were free with their feedback about me and what I was doing. It was so painful that I wonder if I'll ever be happy again. So I guess she's also sharing a story about herself and when she found herself in a vulnerable position, right? She's basically saying that no matter what shield or whatever your coping mechanism, whatever walls you've put up, because to try to create a safety net for yourself, sometimes you will find yourself in a situation where people can see through all of that, right? And not only can they see through it, but they're not having it, right? And they're gonna call you out on it, and it makes you feel really exposed. But then the real test is how do you respond to that, right? Are you going to be defensive, or are you just gonna succumb to the situation and kind of let it happen? And I think a lot of the book is teaching surrender, surrender, surrender kind of situation. To stay with that shakiness, to stay with the broken heart, with a rumbling stomach, with a feeling of hopelessness and wanting to get revenge, that is the path of true awakening. Sticking with that uncertainty, getting the knack of relaxing in the midst of chaos, learning not to panic. This is the spiritual part. When I say I'm on my way, but I'm not there yet, that learning not to panic is such a thing, especially if you've suffered with trauma. It's something that is embedded with you. Sometimes your body cannot tell the difference between the past and the present, and so your subconscious is viewing the situation through the lens of a past occurrence. Does that make sense? Yeah. Every day at the moment when things get edgy, we can just ask ourselves, am I going to practice peace or am I going to war? I don't know if you guys have heard that practice where when you meditate, you label things instead of especially if you're an overactive thinker, instead of saying thinking, feeling, thinking, instead of judging that you're I guess going away from your meditation, you label thinking as thinking. You label feeling as feeling, right? And in the thinking times and the times that you're actually thinking, she's basically saying that it's a point to consciously train yourself in gentleness and in developing a non-judgmental attitude. So basically, instead of saying, dang, instead of meditating, I'm supposed to be clearing my head, I'm thinking again. You're like, instead of doing that, you're like, I'm thinking, and that's okay. I'm feeling, that's okay. And then like gently move yourself back into your meditation practice. It's dope. Dang, I have a lot of stuff that I've highlighted. And can y'all believe this? Look how far I'm only at. See? This is why the book never got finished. The Buddhist monastic rules that advise renouncing liquor, renouncing sex, and so on are not about pointing out those things that are inherently bad or immoral, but that we use them as babysitters. We use them as a way to escape. We use them to try to get comfort and to distract ourselves. The real thing that we renounce is the tenacious hope that we could be saved from being who we are. Renunciation is a teaching to inspire us to investigate what's happening every time we grab something because we can't stand to face what's coming. So like if you're watching this right now, if you want to know like what your vice is, what your babysitter is, what is it that you reach for when things get uncertain, when you get uncomfortable? So are you comfort eating? Are you binge watching Netflix? Are you smoking? Are you drinking? Are you doing drugs? Is it sex? Like it says, like what is your thing, you know? Sometimes it's even, not for lack of a better word, it's a universally healthy thing. Like maybe for you, you just read. But if you are overindulging in reading just to like avoid your real life, then yeah. Yeah, you are, that is absolutely your babysitter. And yeah, so anyway, that's all the quotes I'm going to go into. Per usual, I will have links down below for the hard copy, the audiobook, as well as the Kindle version. I really hope you guys enjoyed this book review. If you did, definitely come back for more. I do them every first Sunday of the month. I have missed the last 2 Sundays, and today I technically missed yesterday. So I just wanted to kind of get caught up here. Again, I've really been struggling with finishing this book, and I didn't want that to hold us back. So I'm going to get back into reading some of the other books I've picked up while I was reading this one, and then that would be the next review. I'm thinking I'm reviewing Ugly Love next by Colleen Hoover. After this deepness, I think I can use a little fiction in my soul. And then, yeah, if you've read this book, or if anything I said kind of stuck out to you, definitely comment down below. Let's have a chat in the comments. Other than that, I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you next month on another episode of Mary's Book Club. Bye-bye.